The conference room on Terminus Station was cold and sterile, just like every diplomatic meeting Han Jiho had ever attended. He sat quietly at the human delegation table, his hands folded on the smooth metal surface. Around him, dozens of alien species filled the massive chamber. Some were tall, some were small, but most of them had one thing in common. They looked dangerous. The Vrexians were the most intimidating. These massive reptilian creatures stood 9 feet tall, their bodies covered in dark green scales that looked harder than armor. Their claws could slice through steel, and their teeth were as long as Jiho's fingers. When they moved, the floor vibrated slightly under their weight. They were the military power in this sector of space, and everyone knew it. Jiho had been on Terminus Station for 3 months now, serving as a junior diplomat for Earth. He was still learning the complex rules that governed how different species interacted. His superior, Ambassador Yoon Dae-ho, had explained it simply during his first week. In space, predators rule. Species with claws and fangs sit at the top. Species without them, like us, survive by being useful and staying quiet. It was not a comforting thought. But Jiho understood. Humans had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. They were newcomers, weak by alien standards, with no natural weapons and soft, fragile bodies. They were tolerated because of their technology and their persistence, but they were not respected. The current meeting was about trade routes through the Kelmar Nebula. It was boring work, filled with arguments about tariffs and shipping schedules. Jiho took notes and tried to stay focused, but his attention wandered to the Vrexian delegation across the room. There was something unusual happening there. A junior Vrexian warrior named Small Fang had brought his cub to the meeting. This was strange. Cubs were never brought to diplomatic functions. The little Vrexian was about the size of a human child, maybe 5 or 6 years old in human terms. Its scales were lighter than its father's, not yet hardened by age. The cub sat quietly next to Small Fang, trying to look brave, but Jiho could see the creature was nervous. Small Fang himself looked tense. Jiho had learned to read Vrexian body language over the past months. The warrior's throat crests were flattened, a sign of stress. His tail twitched constantly. Something was wrong. The meeting continued for another hour. Representatives from different species argued about percentage points and docking fees. It was the kind of tedious work that made Jiho wonder why he had joined the diplomatic corps in the first place. A priority message alert chimed loudly. Small Fang's communication device glowed red. In the quiet conference room, everyone turned to look. The Vrexian warrior read the message, and his entire body went rigid. His throat crests flared wide, then collapsed completely flat against his neck. It was the Vrexian expression of deep grief. Small Fang stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. He spoke rapidly in his own language, then switched to common tongue, the universal language most species used. I must leave. Family emergency. Oh. Family. I must leave. The lead Vrexian delegate, Commander Talon Rend, nodded curtly. But then, there was the problem of the cub. Small Fang looked down at his offspring, clearly torn. He could not take the cub to whatever emergency called him away. Station protocols forbade cubs in most delegation quarters. But no Vrexian would agree to watch another warrior's cub. It would be seen as treating the warrior like he could not manage his own family. The cub sensed something was terribly wrong. Its large eyes, which were surprisingly expressive, began to water. Then it made a sound that cut through the room like a knife. It was a high-pitched keening, a cry of distress that made every predator species in the room uncomfortable. The cub was crying. In predator culture, showing weakness was shameful. The cub knew this instinctively and tried to stop, but that only made it worse. The little creature pressed its claws against its face, trying to hold back the tears. But they came anyway. The crying grew louder. Small Fang looked devastated. His cub was shaming itself in front of the entire council, and he could do nothing about it. Other delegates began to look away, their own cultural programming telling them to ignore this display of weakness. Commander Talon Wren's expression was cold. The Quilvan delegation, a species of rabbit-like herbivores, looked terrified by the sound. The insectoid Hivarathi clicked their mandibles in what might have been disgust. Even Ambassador Yoon beside Jiho shifted uncomfortably in his seat, but Jiho felt something different. He looked at the crying cub and did not see weakness or shame. He saw a scared child who sensed something terrible had happened. A child whose father was about to leave. A child who was overwhelmed and frightened, and trying so hard to be brave. Without thinking about protocols or consequences, Jiho stood up. Ambassador Yoon grabbed his arm. "Jiho, what are you doing?" he whispered urgently. "Something right," Jiho replied quietly and pulled his arm free. He walked across the conference room floor. His footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Every eye in the chamber turned to watch the small human approach the Vrexian cub. Several predator species tensed, their instincts warning them that something unexpected was happening. Jiho reached the cub and knelt down so he was at eye level with the small creature. The cub looked at him with wide, wet eyes, momentarily shocked into silence by the strange human's approach. "Hey, little one," Jiho said softly in common tongue. "It's okay to be sad." Then he did something that made the entire room freeze. He opened his arms and hugged the cub. The small Vrexian stiffened for a moment, confused. No one had ever done this before. Predators did not hug. Physical contact outside of mating or combat was rare in most predator species. But the cub felt the warmth of the human's embrace, felt the gentle pressure of arms that held no claws, and something inside the little creature broke open. The cub burrowed into Jiho's chest and cried harder. But this time, it was not trying to stop. Jiho held the young Vrexian close, one hand gently stroking the ridge of scales along its back. He made soft, soothing sounds, the kind humans instinctively make to comfort upset children. The conference room was absolutely silent. 100 different species watched as a human held a crying predator cub and made no move to pull away, even though the cub's small claws dug into his jacket. After a long moment, the cub's crying began to quiet. It hiccuped a few times and pressed its scaled head against Jiho's shoulder. Jiho looked up at Small Fang, who stood frozen, staring at the human with an expression no one could read. "Go," Jiho said simply. "Be with your family. I'll watch over your cub." Small Fang's throat crests flared wide. You would guard my blood?" "Of course," Jiho said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. "He's scared and sad. He needs someone right now. And you need to go. It's not complicated." Commander Talon Wren took a threatening step forward, but Small Fang raised a claw to stop him. The young father continued to stare at Jiho for a long moment. Then, slowly, he dropped to one knee. He placed both claws over his heart and began to speak in ancient Vrexian, a language rarely heard outside of their homeworld. Ambassador Yoon's translator device struggled with the archaic words, then finally produced a translation that made the ambassador's face go pale. "Blood debt sworn. Life oath given. My claws are your claws, human, who protects cubs." Every Vrexian in the room slammed their tails against the floor in unison, creating a thunderous boom that made the smaller species jump. It was a ritual acknowledgement, a recognition of something sacred. Jiho had no idea what he had just done. He only knew that the small creature in his arms had stopped crying and was now looking up at him with curious, trusting eyes. "What's your name?" Jiho asked the cub gently. "Sharp Eye," the cub replied in a small voice. "I'm Jiho. Nice to meet you, Sharp Eye." Small Fang rose, gave his cub one last look, and left the chamber quickly. Commander Talon Wren watched him go, then turned his massive head toward Jiho. "Do you understand what you have done, human?" the commander asked, his voice like grinding stones. Jiho stood carefully, still holding Sharp Eye. The commander's expression might have been amusement, or it might have been something more dangerous. You have done far more than that, human Jiho. Far more. 8. You have done far more. As Jiho carried the now quiet cub out of the conference room, heading toward the human delegation quarters, he felt dozens of predator eyes following him. He had broken some rule he did not understand. He had crossed some line that was apparently sacred. But when Sharp Eye wrapped his small arms around Jiho's neck and whispered, "Thank you," the human knew he would make the same choice again. Behind him, the conference dissolved into chaos as delegates from dozens of species tried to understand what they had just witnessed. And in the shadows, some species began to see humans in a different light. The soft species, the weak species, the species with no claws and no fangs, had just done something no predator would dare to do. They had shown that strength and gentleness were not opposites. The human delegation quarters were simple and functional, designed for a species that required less space than most. Jiho carried Sharp Eye through the corridors of Terminus Station, aware of the stares they were receiving. Aliens of every type stopped what they were doing to watch the human carrying a Vrexian cub. Some looked confused, others looked shocked. A few of the predator species made gestures that Jiho did not understand but suspected were signs of respect. When they reached the human quarters, Jiho found his colleagues waiting anxiously. Ambassador Yoon stood with his arms crossed, looking worried. Park Minho, the security officer, had his hand near his weapon. Kim Sora, the cultural specialist, was frantically reading something on her data pad. Lee Junho, the medical officer, had already prepared a small medical kit, just in case. Jiho, Ambassador Yoon said carefully, "We need to talk about what you just did." "Later," Jiho replied. "Right now, Sharp Eye needs food and a safe place to rest." Sharp Eye had been quiet during the walk. But now he looked around the human quarters with wide eyes. Everything here was smaller than what he was used to. The chairs were too small for adult Vrexians. The doorways were low. But the lighting was warm, not the harsh, white light of most station areas. The cub's nose twitched as he smelled something unfamiliar, but not unpleasant. Lee Junho approached slowly, keeping his movements gentle. "May I examine him? Just to make sure he's healthy?" Sharp Eye pressed closer to Jiho, uncertain. Jiho stroked the cub's back. "It's okay. Junho is a doctor. He helps people feel better." The cub allowed the examination, though he kept one small, clawed hand gripping Jiho's sleeve. Lee Junho was professional and quick. "He's healthy," the doctor reported. "And his stress hormones are elevated, but that's expected given the situation." "Can he eat our food?" Jiho asked. Kim Sora looked up from her datapad. "Vrexians are carnivores, but they can process a wide range of proteins. We have some protein supplements that should work. Avoid anything with high sugar content. Their metabolism can't handle it well." Jiho nodded and guided Sharp Eye to a sitting area. Park Minho brought water in a container sized for the cub. Sharp Eye sniffed it suspiciously, then drank gratefully. His throat made small clicking sounds as he swallowed. Once the immediate needs were handled, Ambassador Yoon sat down across from Jiho. His expression was serious. "Do you know what a life oath is?" Jiho shook his head. "The translator gave me the words, but I don't know what they mean." "Jiho, to heaven one." Jiho shook his head. "The translator gave me the words." Kim Sora joined them, her datapad in hand. She had been researching frantically since the incident. A life oath is one of the most sacred bonds in Vrexian culture. When Smallfang said those words, he swore that his life is now tied to yours. His honor is your honor. His enemies are your enemies. And most importantly, his loyalty is absolute. "That seems extreme for babysitting," Jiho said. "It's not about babysitting," Kim Sora explained. "It's about what babysitting represents to them. In predator cultures, especially among Vrexians, protecting another individual's offspring is the highest form of trust. Parents guard their young with their lives. For someone outside the family to volunteer that protection is essentially saying, I value your child as much as you do. Park Min-ho whistled softly. And for a prey species to protect a predator's child. It's unprecedented. Kim Sora finished. I've been searching the cultural database. There's no record of anything like this happening before. Ever. Ambassador Yoon rubbed his temples. Earth Command is going to want a full report on this. They're going to want to know why you created an interspecies incident without authorization. I didn't create an incident, Jiho said quietly, still stroking Sharp Eye's back. The cub had curled up next to him, exhausted from emotion. I helped a scared child. That's all. That's not all it was, Kim Sora said, but her voice was gentle. Not to them. You crossed a cultural boundary that most species don't even know exists. You showed vulnerability by approaching a predator's offspring. You showed trust by offering protection. And you showed strength by doing it without hesitation or fear. Sharp Eye made a small sound in his sleep. His claws twitched, and one of them accidentally scratched Jiho's arm. The human did not pull away. Lee Junho moved to treat the small wound, but Jiho waved him off. Park Minho watched this exchange with interest. You really care about him, don't you? He's a child who lost his grandmother and whose father had to leave, Jiho said simply. Of course I care. The security officer smiled slightly. That's very human of you. Over the next 3 days, while Small Fang was away for the funeral rites, Sharp Eye stayed with the humans. It was a strange arrangement that became the talk of Terminus Station. News traveled fast in the closed environment of the diplomatic hub. By the end of the first day, every delegation knew about the human who had hugged the Vrexian cub. Reactions varied wildly. The Quilvan delegation sent a formal message expressing hope that this might lead to better predator-prey relations. The Krell Pack, wolf-like predators who served as station security, began posting guards outside the human quarters. Ambassador Yoon worried this was a threat until Kim Sora explained they were offering protection, not surveillance. The Fangor clans, bear-like predators, requested a meeting with Jiho. So did the Talon fleets, the avian raptors, even the mysterious depth walkers, aquatic predators rarely seen outside their water-filled sections, sent a message of acknowledgement. But not all reactions were positive. The Hyverathi, an insectoid species that dominated many trade negotiations, were noticeably silent. Their queen voice, Skitter Brood, watched the developments with what Kim Sora suspected was concern. The Hyverathi maintained power through careful political maneuvering and by playing different species against each other. A sudden shift in how predators viewed humans could upset their carefully maintained balance. Inside the human quarters, life took on a strange new rhythm. Sharp Eye was initially withdrawn, grieving for his grandmother. Jiho did not try to stop the cub's sadness. Instead, he sat with Sharp Eye and let the young Vrexian cry when he needed to. My mother died when I was young too, Jiho told the cub one evening. They sat together on the floor. Jiho with his back against the wall, Sharp Eye leaning against his side. The sadness was very big. It felt like it would never get smaller. Does it? Sharp Eye asked in his small voice. The cub's common tongue was improving quickly. Young minds learned languages fast. It gets easier to carry, Jiho said. The sadness doesn't go away, but you get stronger, and you remember the good things too. Not just the loss. Sharp Eye thought about this. Grandmother taught me to hunt. She was very patient. Tell me about her, Jiho suggested. And Sharp Eye did. He talked about his grandmother in halting common tongue mixed with Vrexian words. He described her lessons, her stories, her way of clicking her tongue when she was pleased. Jiho listened to all of it, asking questions, helping Sharp Eye remember the good along with the grief. Lee Junho watched these conversations with professional interest. You're good with him, the doctor observed privately. I'm just listening, Jiho replied. That's more than most would do, Lee Junho said, especially across species lines. As the days passed, Sharp-Eye began to open up more. He explored the human quarters with growing curiosity. He was fascinated by human food, even though he could only eat some of it. He watched human entertainment programs with wide eyes, amazed by the stories where small creatures were heroes and where different species became friends. Park Min-ho taught Sharp-Eye a simple Earth game involving tossing a ball. The cub's coordination was impressive, and he could catch things Min-ho threw with surprising accuracy. Sharp-Eye is a good name for you, the security officer laughed. Kim Sora showed Sharp-Eye pictures of Earth animals. The cub was particularly interested in cats. They are small predators, he observed. Humans keep them in their homes? As companions, Kim Sora explained. As friends. Sharp-Eye found this concept strange but appealing. Friends with predators? Friends with anyone who wants to be friends, Kim Sora said. Crom. Kim. 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 Kim, Sora said. On the third night, Sharp-Eye had a nightmare. His distressed cries woke everyone in the quarters. Jiho reached him first, finding the cub thrashing in his sleep, claws extended. Without hesitation, Jiho gathered the young Vrexian into his arms, ignoring the claws that dug into his shoulders. It's okay, Jiho said softly, over and over. You're safe. I'm here. You're safe. Sharp-Eye woke with a gasp. His eyes were wild for a moment, then focused on Jiho's face. I dreamed Mother was gone too. The cub whimpered. I dreamed everyone was gone. I'm here, Jiho promised. You're not alone. The cub pressed his face against Jiho's chest and cried. His claws dug deeper, drawing blood, but Jiho did not let go. He simply held the frightened child and let him cry until the fear passed. Later, after Sharp-Eye had fallen back asleep, Lee Junho treated Jiho's wounds. They were not deep. Sharp-Eye had been careful even in his distress, some instinct telling the cub not to truly harm this strange protector. You should be more careful, Lee Junho said, as he applied bandages. He needed me, Jiho replied. That's more important than a few scratches. Ambassador Yoon, who had witnessed the scene, said nothing. But his expression had changed. He looked at Jiho with something that might have been respect. On the morning of the fourth day, Small Fang returned. He did not come alone. Commander Talon Rend accompanied him, along with 12 other Vrexian warriors. They made a formal procession to the human quarters, their heavy footsteps echoing through the station corridors. The humans tensed as the group of massive predators filled their small reception area. But Small Fang's eyes were only for his cub. Sharp-Eye ran to his father with a cry of joy, and the reunion was deeply emotional. Small Fang nuzzled his offspring, checking him over with careful attention, while Sharp-Eye chattered excitedly in Vrexian. Then Small Fang turned to Jiho. The human stood quietly, waiting. The Vrexian warrior approached and knelt, bringing his massive head level with Jiho's. My cub is well, Small Fang said. His voice was thick with emotion. He is healthy. He is happy. You have honored your word, human Jiho. You have given me a gift beyond price. You let me say goodbye to my blood parent, while my cub remained safe. I'm glad I could help, Jiho said simply. Commander Talon Rend stepped forward. The massive warrior looked down at Jiho for a long moment. I did not believe it, he said finally. I thought human weakness was exactly that weakness. I thought your species survived, through luck and clever technology. Nothing more. He paused, and his throat crests flared wide. I was wrong. You protected a predator's cub as fiercely as any warrior would. You honored grief instead of despising it. You showed strength I did not know existed in your species. The commander knelt, just as Small Fang had done days before. He placed both massive claws over his heart. My claws are your claws, human Jiho. One by one, the other Vrexian warriors did the same. 12 of the most dangerous predators in known space swore loyalty to a single human who had done nothing more than show kindness to a crying child. Jiho looked at Ambassador Yoon, confused. The ambassador's face had gone pale. Kim Sora was frantically taking notes. Park Minho stood very still, hand near his weapon, though he knew it would be useless against so many Vrexians. "I don't understand," Jiho said. Commander Talon Rend rose. "You will, human Jiho. When the challenges come, you will understand what you have built here. You have shown us a new form of strength. Now we will show you what predator loyalty means." The Vrexians left as formally as they had arrived. Sharp Eye hugged Jiho one last time before going with his father. "Will I see you again?" the cub asked. "Anytime you want," Jiho promised. After they were gone, the humans stood in silence. Finally, Ambassador Yoon spoke. "Jiho, I think you just changed everything." "I just hugged a scared kid," Jiho protested. "No," Kim Sora said softly, looking up from her datapad. "You just gained the loyalty of the Vrexian military elite, and according to station communications I'm monitoring, delegations from 15 other predator species are requesting meetings with you." Park Minho laughed suddenly. "Humanity's first alien alliance." And it started with a hug. But in another section of the station, Skitter Brood of the Hyvarathi watched the reports with growing alarm. The careful balance of power was shifting. Something had to be done. The peaceful moment would not last long. The emergency council session was called 3 days after the Vrexian warriors swore loyalty to Jiho. The human delegation received notice with only 2 hours to prepare. Ambassador Yoon knew immediately that something was wrong. Emergency sessions were rare and usually meant serious trouble. "This is about you," Yoon told Jiho, as they walked quickly toward the council chambers. "The Hyvarathi have been very quiet since the incident with Sharp Eye. Too quiet." Kim Sora hurried alongside them, reviewing data on her portable device. "I've been monitoring station communications. There's been a lot of private messaging between the Hyvarathi and several minor delegations. They're building a coalition." "Against us?" Jiho asked. "Against what you represent," Kim Sora corrected. "You've disrupted the power structure. The Hyvarathi have maintained influence for decades by playing different species against each other. If predator species start seeing humans as valuable allies rather than weak prey, it undermines everything the Hyvarathi have built." Park Minho walked behind them, his expression grim. "We should have seen this coming." The council chamber was already full when they arrived. The circular room could hold representatives from over 100 species. Today, it seemed like every delegation on the station had sent someone. The tension in the air was thick enough to cut. The Hyvarathi delegation occupied a prime position near the center. The insectoid's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation in their species. Around the chamber, Jiho could see the delegations that the Hyvarathi had recruited. Smaller species, mostly prey types, who feared the predators and resented their dominance. But he also saw surprising faces. Commander Talon Rend stood with the Vrexian delegation, his eyes fixed on the Hyvarathi. Silver Fang of the Krell pack was present, along with representatives from the Fangor clans and the Talon fleets. Even some of the Quilven, the rabbit-like herbivores, seemed to be positioned closer to the predator delegations than usual. The session began formally. The Council Arbiter, a neutral species that facilitated meetings, called for order. Skitter Brood wasted no time. "We call for the immediate expulsion of the human delegation from Terminus Station," the Queen voice announced. "We further demand that humanity's petition for full council membership be permanently denied." The chamber erupted in noise. Dozens of species tried to speak at once. The Arbiter called for silence, then asked Skitter Brood to present the formal accusation. "The humans have violated station neutrality protocols," Skitter Brood stated. "They have manipulated predator psychology for political gain. They have exploited natural instincts to create artificial alliances. They have undermined the established hierarchy that has maintained peace on this station for generations." Ambassador Yoon stood. "We did no such thing." One of our diplomats showed compassion to a distressed child. That is not manipulation. Is it not? Skitterbrood's mandibles spread wide. How convenient that this act of supposed compassion resulted in loyalty oaths from multiple predator species. How convenient that humanity, which has struggled for recognition, suddenly finds itself with powerful military allies. Several delegations murmured agreement. Jiho felt his stomach sink. When framed that way, his actions did seem calculated. But they had not been. He had just wanted to help Sharp Eye. A representative from the Trilaxian Collective, a species of crystalline beings, spoke up. The Queen voice raises valid concerns. We have observed increased predator activity around the human quarters. Some might interpret this as a military buildup. Those are guards, Park Minho said firmly. Offering protection, not threat. Protection from what? Skitterbrood demanded. Unless the humans fear retaliation for their manipulation? Commander Talon Rend rose to his full impressive height. His voice was like controlled thunder. The Hivarathi accuse humans of manipulation? This is cowardice speaking. Human Jiho showed honor. He protected a cub when others turned away in disgust. He honored grief when others mocked weakness. These are not manipulations. These are strengths the Hivarathi cannot understand. The Vrexians are proving our point, Skitterbrood replied smoothly. They are so influenced by this human that they cannot see clearly. This is exactly why the humans must be removed before they corrupt the entire station's social structure. The debate raged for over an hour. Species took sides. Some agreed with the Hivarathi that humans had crossed a line. Others, particularly predator species, defended Jiho's actions. The prey species were divided. Some feared the growing predator unity. Others, like some of the Quilvan, seemed intrigued by the possibility of a different social structure. Jiho sat quietly through most of it, feeling increasingly helpless. He had not meant to cause this. He had just wanted to help a scared child. Finally, the arbiter called for a recess. The delegations dispersed to discuss and strategize. Ambassador Yoon led the human delegation to a private room. This is bad, Yoon said bluntly. The Hivarathi have enough support to force a vote. If it goes against us, we'll be expelled from the station and lose any chance at council membership. This is my fault, Jiho said quietly. No, Kim Sora said firmly. This is politics. The Hivarathi were always going to oppose us eventually. You just gave them an excuse sooner rather than later. Lee Junho had been quiet. But now he spoke up. He had been analyzing data from the station's medical systems as part of a routine health study. There's something odd in the medical reports. I've been noticing unusual patterns in aggression and stress hormones across multiple species. What kind of patterns? Park Minho asked. Elevated levels, particularly in areas near the Hivarathi sectors, Lee Junho explained. He brought up charts on a display screen. At first, I thought it was just station stress, but the patterns are too specific. The elevation is highest in delegations that have had the most contact with Hivarathi representatives. Kim Sora leaned forward, studying the data. Her eyes widened. Junho, what if it's not natural? What if something is causing these elevations? The doctor frowned. You mean environmental? Let me check the atmospheric data for those sectors. He worked quickly, pulling up environmental monitoring reports. As he compared the medical data with atmospheric readings, his expression grew dark. There are trace amounts of an unidentified compound in the air recycling systems near Hivarathi sectors. It's so subtle that the regular monitoring didn't flag it as dangerous. What does it do? Ambassador Yoon asked urgently. If I'm reading this correctly, it affects neurotransmitter production in most species, Lee Junho said. It would increase aggression, reduce empathy, heighten paranoia. But it wouldn't affect Hivarathi biology. They have a completely different neurological structure. The implications hit everyone at once. Kim Sora began cross-referencing the data with historical station records. If this is true, the Hivarathi have been manipulating station politics for years. Every conflict, every failed negotiation, Every breakdown in diplomacy could have been influenced by this compound. Can we prove it? Park Min-ho asked. I need more time to confirm, Lee Junho said. But yes, I think so. Ambassador Yoon paced the room. If we expose this now, it could save us from expulsion. The Hyverathi would be destroyed politically. It would be more than political, Kim Sora said quietly. Every species they've manipulated would want revenge. We're talking about decades of manufactured conflicts. Wars might have been started because of this. The Hyverathi could face extinction. Everyone turned to look at Jiho. He sat with his head in his hands, thinking. After a long moment, he looked up. We can't just expose it publicly, he said. What? Ambassador Yoon looked shocked. Jiho, this could save us. This could save your career, humanity's reputation, everything, and it would destroy an entire species, Jiho replied. Yes. What they've done is terrible. Yes. They need to be stopped. But we don't have to annihilate them to stop them. They're trying to expel us from the station, Park Min-ho pointed out. I know, Jiho said. But think about why they're doing this. They're afraid. They're a prey species in a galaxy dominated by predators. They found a way to level the playing field, and they used it. It's wrong, but I understand the fear that drove them to it. Kim Sora studied him. What are you proposing? We confront them privately, Jiho said. We show them the evidence and give them a choice. They can confess to the council and face justice through negotiation and restitution, or we expose them and let every species they've hurt take their revenge. That's incredibly risky, Ambassador Yoon said. They might refuse. They might destroy the evidence. They might make things worse. Maybe, Jiho agreed. But if we've learned anything from the Cub Bond, it's that there are better ways than just crushing your enemies. If we want to prove that humanity deserves a place in the galactic community, we need to show that we can be strong without being cruel. Lee Junho smiled slightly. You hugged a predator's cub and gained their loyalty. Now you want to show mercy to your enemies? I want to find a solution where nobody has to die, Jiho said simply. Ambassador Yoon was quiet for a long time. Finally, he nodded. I'll request a private meeting with Skitterbrood. But Jiho, you understand that if this doesn't work, we've lost our chance to defend ourselves publicly? I understand, Jiho said. The meeting was arranged for that evening. Skitterbrood agreed to meet in a neutral conference room, with Commander Talon Rend and Silver Fang present as witnesses. The Hyverathi Queen Voice arrived, expecting a negotiation for humanity's peaceful withdrawal from the station. Instead, Jiho presented the evidence. Lee Junho displayed the medical data, the atmospheric readings, and the correlation analysis. The evidence was clear and damning. Skitterbrood's mandibles went very still. You have been poisoning the station's atmosphere, Jiho said quietly. You've been manipulating every species here for years, making them more aggressive, more paranoid, easier to turn against each other. You've manufactured conflicts to maintain your own power. Skitterbrood did not deny it. The Queen Voice's compound eyes stared at the data for a long moment. You discovered this quickly. Human. Impressive. Qutina. 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 We're giving you a choice, Jiho continued. Confess to the council. Shut down your atmospheric manipulation systems. Submit to a truth-telling process where you admit your crimes and work out restitution with the species you've harmed. Or we expose this publicly right now, and you face the wrath of every delegation on this station. Why? Skitterbrood asked. Why give us this choice? We were trying to destroy you. Because I believe you were afraid, Jiho said. I believe you saw predators dominating everything and found a way to protect your species. It was wrong, and it caused terrible harm. But I understand the fear behind it. If there's a way to fix this without wiping out your entire species, we should try. Ever, Commander Talon Rend growled. If it were my choice, human Jiho, I would expose them now. Let the station tear them apart for their dishonor. I know, Jiho said. But that's not who I want humanity to be. Skitterbrood was silent for a very long time. Finally, the Queen voice spoke. You are strange creatures, humans. Weak by any physical measure, yet stronger in ways we did not anticipate. Very well. We will confess. We will face the truth-telling. But know this. Many will not be satisfied with mercy. Many will want our destruction anyway. Maybe, Jiho agreed, but at least we'll have tried for something better. As they left the meeting, Commander Talon Rend walked beside Jiho. You have a soft heart, human Jiho. In a predator, this would be weakness. In you, I am beginning to think it is something else entirely. What? Jiho asked. I do not yet have a word for it, the commander admitted. But I begin to understand why my warriors swore loyalty to you. The next day, the council reconvened. Skitterbrood stood before the entire assembly and confessed everything. The chamber erupted in fury and demands for harsh punishment, but Jiho spoke, arguing for restorative justice, for a chance at peace rather than revenge. The debate lasted for hours. In the end, the vote was close, but it passed. The Hivarathi would dismantle their manipulation systems, submit to monitoring, and provide restitution. They would face justice, but not extinction. As the session ended, Jiho felt exhausted. He had made powerful enemies today, but he had also, perhaps, shown that there was another way. Ambassador Yoon clapped him on the shoulder. I hope you know what you're doing. So do I, Jiho admitted. Only time would tell if mercy had been wisdom or foolishness. The truth-telling ceremony took place in the largest chamber on Terminus Station. It was an ancient practice, used rarely, where a species formally admitted wrongdoing before the entire council and negotiated restitution with those they had harmed. The chamber was packed. Every delegation had sent representatives. Some came seeking justice. Others came out of curiosity. A few came hoping to see the Hivarathi destroyed, despite the mercy offered. Jiho sat with the human delegation in their assigned section. He felt the weight of dozens of eyes on him. Some looks were grateful. Others were angry. Many delegations felt he had robbed them of proper revenge against the Hivarathi. The insectoid species had manipulated conflicts for decades. Wars had been fought, lives lost, economies damaged, all because of chemical compounds carefully introduced into the station's atmosphere. Skitterbrood stood at the center of the chamber, alone. The Queen voice had chosen to face this, without the support of the Hivarathi delegation. It was a gesture of accountability, though whether it would be enough remained to be seen. The arbiter, the neutral facilitator, began the ceremony with traditional words in a dozen different languages. Then, Skitterbrood spoke. We confess, the Queen voice said, mandibles clicking slowly. For 43 cycles, the Hivarathi have manipulated the atmospheric systems of Terminus Station. We introduced compounds designed to increase aggression, reduce empathy, and heighten paranoia in most species. We did this to create conflicts that we could then mediate, gaining power and influence in a galaxy where our species is physically weak. The chamber remained silent, but the tension was overwhelming. Skitterbrood continued, detailing the extent of the manipulation. Specific conflicts were named. Failed peace negotiations, trade wars that escalated unnecessarily. Even a military skirmish between two minor species that resulted in casualties. We did this out of fear, Skitterbrood said. Fear of being crushed by stronger species. Fear of being prey in a predator's galaxy. This does not excuse our actions. It explains them, but it does not excuse them. We have caused immeasurable harm to achieve temporary safety. For this, we seek to make restitution. The formal confession ended. Now came the difficult part, determining what restitution meant. Representatives from injured species stood to voice their demands. Some wanted financial compensation. Ended. Others wanted trade concessions. The Vrexians, whose honor had been particularly violated, demanded that Hivarathi military capabilities be permanently restricted. The debate went on for hours. Jiho listened carefully, trying to gauge the mood of the chamber. There was anger. Yes, but also something else. Some species seemed almost relieved. The revelation explained years of seemingly irrational conflicts. It gave meaning to losses that had previously seemed senseless. Commander Talon Rend spoke for the Vrexians. We demand restrictions. Yes. But we also acknowledge that the human Jiho was correct. Destroying the Hivarathi serves no purpose beyond satisfying anger. Our honor demands justice, not genocide. We will accept the proposed terms: monitoring, disarmament, and a 40-cycle period of restitution. Restitution. One by one, other predator species agreed to similar terms. The Krell Pack, the Fangor clans, the Talon fleets. Each demanded justice, but accepted the framework of restorative rather than punitive action. The prey species were more divided. Some, like the Quilvan, supported the mercy. Others wanted harsher punishment. A representative from the Trilaxian collective argued that the Hivarathi could not be trusted and should be expelled from all council activities permanently. It was during this debate that something unexpected happened. Small Fang, the Vrexian warrior whose cub Jiho had protected, requested permission to speak. The arbiter granted it, though this was unusual. Small Fang was not a primary representative. I wish to speak about trust, Small Fang said. His voice carried clearly through the chamber. Before human Jiho protected my cub, I would have demanded the harshest punishment for the Hivarathi. Blood for blood, honor for dishonor. This is the way of warriors. He paused, his throat crests flaring. But human Jiho taught me something. He taught my cub that strength and gentleness are not opposites. He taught me that asking for help is not weakness. He showed my people that there are forms of honor we had not considered. Small Fang turned to face Skitterbrood directly. The Hivarathi acted from fear. I understand fear now, because I felt it when my blood parent died and my cub cried in shame. In that moment of fear, a human showed me mercy and strength together. Perhaps we can show the same to those who have wronged us. The chamber was very quiet. Then, Sharp Eye, Small Fang's cub, spoke up from where he sat with the Vrexian delegation. Jiho says that being strong means choosing to be kind even when you could be mean. Is this not a chance to be strong? So, the young voice broke something in the tension. Several delegates actually laughed, though not unkindly. There was something disarming about a Vrexian cub quoting human philosophy. The vote that followed was not unanimous, but it passed with a clear majority. The Hivarathi would face justice through the framework Jiho had proposed: monitoring, disarmament, restitution, and a long probationary period during which any violation would result in immediate expulsion from all council activities. As the ceremony concluded, Skitterbrood approached Jiho. The Queen Voice's mandibles moved in a pattern that Kim Sora's translator identified as profound respect mixed with confusion. You saved my species, human Jiho, Skitterbrood said. After we tried to destroy yours, I do not understand your kind. We're not that complicated, Jiho replied. We just try to find solutions where everyone gets to keep living. Most species see life as competition, Skitterbrood observed. You seem to see it as cooperation. Both can be true, Jiho said. But I prefer cooperation when possible. The Queen Voice made a gesture that might have been a bow. The Hivarathi will honor the terms. And perhaps, in time, we will learn this strange, human way of thinking. Over the following weeks, Terminus Station underwent remarkable changes. The Hivarathi shut down their atmospheric manipulation systems and submitted to continuous monitoring. Station environmental systems were purged and upgraded. As the chemical compounds left the atmosphere, tensions that had seemed normal for decades began to ease. Delegates who had been bitter rivals for years found they could suddenly negotiate more productively. Old conflicts that had seemed impossible to resolve were revisited with fresh eyes. It was like the entire station took a collective breath and relaxed slightly. But the most significant changes were cultural. The incident with Sharp Eye, combined with Jiho's handling of the Hivarathi crisis, had fundamentally shifted how many species viewed humans and each other. The Vrexians formally proposed a pack bond program. They invited human cultural specialists to visit their homeworld and teach about human approaches to childcare, emotional development, and conflict resolution. Commander Talon Rend explained it to Ambassador Yoon in a private meeting. "We have been warriors for 10,000 cycles," the commander said. "We are good at war. We are good at honor and strength. But human Jiho showed us we have been missing something. We want to learn this missing piece." The Krell pack followed suit, as did the Fangor clans and several other predator species. Within a month, Earth's diplomatic corps was flooded with requests for cultural exchanges focused specifically on human emotional intelligence and social bonding. Even more surprisingly, prey species began reaching out. The Quilvan sent a delegation to Earth, specifically to study human approaches to coexistence with predators. "On our world, we hide from predators," their representative explained. "We see you live alongside them, even befriend them. We want to understand how this is possible." One frowned. "We want to understand." One frowned. One frowned. Jiho found himself at the center of something much larger than he had anticipated. He was invited to speak at gatherings, to advise on negotiations, to help facilitate new types of discussions between species that had never truly talked before. One evening, he sat in the observation lounge with his colleagues, watching ships come and go from the station. Park Minho brought drinks. Kim Sora was reviewing data on her portable device, as always. Lee Junho was writing notes for a medical paper about interspecies stress responses. Ambassador Yoon sat quietly, looking thoughtful. "I never intended any of this," Jiho said into the comfortable silence. "I just hugged a scared kid." "You did more than that," Kim Sora said without looking up. "You broke a pattern. For generations, the galactic community has operated on strict hierarchies. Predator over prey. Strong over weak. Ruthless over gentle. You showed there's another way. The analysis is interesting," she continued, finally looking up. "In the 3 weeks since the atmospheric compounds were cleared, conflict incidents on the station are down 60%. Successful negotiations are up 45%. And there have been 12 new cross-species cooperation initiatives proposed. All because we stopped being poisoned?" Park Minho asked. "Not just that," Kim Sora said. "The poisoning made things worse. But the real change is conceptual. Species are questioning assumptions they've held for centuries. If a human can gain predator loyalty through compassion, if mercy can be stronger than revenge, if a prey species can become friends with predators, then what else might be possible?" Lee Junho smiled. "You've started a revolution, Jiho. A very gentle, very human revolution. I just want people to be okay." Jiho protested. "That's the revolution," Ambassador Yoon said. He had been quiet all evening, but now he looked at Jiho with clear respect. Most species focus on their own survival, their own advancement. You focus on everyone's well-being. It's a fundamentally different approach. And it's changing how species interact. A message alert interrupted the conversation. It was from Commander Talon Rend, requesting Jiho's presence at the Vrexian sector. Jiho excused himself and made his way through the station corridors, now familiar after months of residence. When he arrived at the Vrexian sector, he found not just Commander Talon Rend, but dozens of Vrexian warriors assembled. Small Fang was there with Sharp Eye. The cub had grown noticeably in the past weeks, his scales darkening as he matured. "Human Jiho," Commander Talon Rend said formally. "We have made a decision. We wish to formalize what has been growing between our species and yours." He presented Jiho with a curved blade, similar to the one Small Fang had given him but larger and more ornate. This is a pack leader's blade. We offer it to you not as a weapon, but as a symbol. You are pack brother to the Vrexians, now and always. Your blood is our blood. Your protection is our oath. Your enemies are our enemies. One by one, the Vrexian warriors performed the loyalty oath. It was overwhelming. Jiho had gained not just Small Fang's loyalty, but the formal alliance of one of the galaxy's most powerful military species. Sharp Eye approached, looking shy. I made you something, the young Vrexian said. He held out a small, carved stone. It depicted a human figure, holding a Vrexian cub. The craftsmanship was crude. Sharp Eye was still young, but the sentiment was clear. So I remember, Sharp Eye explained. So everyone remembers. The day everything changed, Jiho knelt down and hugged the cub, just as he had that first day. Sharp Eye hugged back. More confident now. More secure. Thank you, Jiho said softly. I'll treasure this. As he left the Vrexian sector that night, Jiho realized something profound. He had not set out to change galactic politics or forge new alliances. He had simply responded to a crying child with compassion. But sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness can reshape entire worlds. The station was changing. The galaxy was changing. And it had all started with a hug. But Jiho knew this was just the beginning. Real change took time, effort, and continued commitment. The atmospheric poisoning was ended. But the cultural patterns that had allowed such manipulation would take generations to fully transform. There would be setbacks. There would be species who resisted these changes. There would be new challenges. Yet as he walked through the station corridors, seeing Vrexian warriors nodding respectfully to Quilvan merchants, seeing Krell guards sharing meals with Trilaxian diplomats, seeing species that had been enemies for centuries actually talking to each other, Jiho felt something rare and precious. Hope. The galaxy was vast and often dangerous, but it was also full of beings who wanted connection, who wanted peace, who wanted to protect their cubs and keep their families safe. Perhaps, if they could all find common ground in that simple truth, real change was possible. Jiho returned to the human quarters to find his colleagues waiting with news. Earth Command had sent official recognition of his achievements. Humanity was being granted full council membership, fast-tracked due to their extraordinary diplomatic contributions. They want you to be Earth's first full council representative, Ambassador Yoon said. You're being promoted over me, which I'm absolutely fine with because I do not want the headache you've created. Everyone laughed. Jiho felt overwhelmed. I'm not qualified for that. Endon. I'm Jiho. You gained the loyalty of the Vrexians, showed mercy to enemies, and started a cultural revolution across multiple species, Kim Sora pointed out. I think you're qualified. Besides, Park Minho added with a grin, you're already doing the job. Might as well get the official title and the raise. Jiho thought about Sharp Eye's carved stone, safely tucked in his pocket. He thought about the scared cub crying in the conference room, and the decision he had made to simply offer comfort. He thought about all the changes that had rippled out from that one moment. Okay, he said finally. I'll do it. But only if we can keep pushing for real change. Not just treaties and trade agreements. Real cultural transformation. That's the human way, Lee Junho said with approval. Always reaching for something better. As they celebrated that evening, none of them knew that the changes they had started would eventually reshape the entire galactic community. They did not know about the threats that would soon emerge, or the challenges they would face together. They only knew that they had found something rare. A path forward that did not require crushing their enemies or compromising their values. A path built on compassion, cooperation, and the radical idea that strength and gentleness were not opposites. It was a very human path. And slowly, carefully, other species were learning to walk it too. 3 months after the truth-telling ceremony, Terminus Station had become a different place. The changes were visible everywhere. Vrexian warriors walked alongside Quilvan merchants without aggression. Krell pack guards shared meals with species they had once intimidated. The Hivarathi, though watched carefully, were slowly being reintegrated into station life. They worked diligently on their restitution obligations, and some delegates had even begun cautiously interacting with them again. Jiho had officially become Earth's council representative, the youngest person ever to hold such a position. His days were filled with meetings, negotiations, and endless diplomatic functions. But he made time every week to visit Sharp Eye, who continued to grow and thrive under Small Fang's care. The young Vrexian had become something of a station celebrity, known as the Cub who had changed everything. It was during one of these routine weeks that everything changed again. The alarms went off at 0300 station time. Jiho woke immediately, years of diplomatic training kicking in. Emergency alerts meant serious trouble. He dressed quickly and rushed to the operations center, where Ambassador Yoon, Kim Sora, Park Minho, and Lee Junho were already gathering with other delegates. The station commander, a Krell named Silver Fang, stood at the central display. "We have a situation. Long-range sensors have detected a fleet approaching from outside known space. Configuration is unknown. They are not responding to any communications." The display showed a tactical map. Dozens of ships, all marked in red for unknown hostiles, were moving toward the outer colonies that served as the gateway to Council space. "Who are they?" someone asked. "We don't know," Silver Fang replied. "They don't match any known species signature." Over the next hours, the situation became clearer and more frightening. The unknown fleet was attacking colony worlds indiscriminately. They did not discriminate between predator and prey, powerful and weak. They simply destroyed. 3 colonies had already gone dark. Distress signals painted a picture of overwhelming force and no mercy. The council convened in emergency session. For the first time since Jiho had been on the station, he saw genuine fear on the faces of species who normally showed nothing but confidence. This was an extinction-level threat, and everyone knew it. The debate began immediately. The old patterns started to reassert themselves. Predator species argued for military response, but wanted to protect their own territories first. Prey species wanted to flee, to scatter, and hide. The Hivarathi, still on probation, were not even invited to the military planning sessions. Jiho watched the arguments escalate, seeing the fragile unity they had built over the past months starting to crack under pressure. This was the real test. When survival was at stake, would species fall back into old patterns, or had something truly changed? Commander Talon Rend was arguing for a Vrexian-led military response. "Our warriors are the strongest. We should lead the defense." A representative from the Talon fleets disagreed. "Your warriors are ground troops. This is a space battle. Our ships are faster." The Fangor clans wanted to focus on defending their home territories. The Quilvan were discussing evacuation protocols. Everyone was talking past each other, focused on their own survival. Jiho stood. The chamber quieted. Over the past months, he had earned a reputation. When the humans spoke, people listened. "We're doing this wrong," Jiho said simply. "We're falling back into old patterns. Everyone protecting their own. Everyone focused on their own survival. That's exactly what this enemy wants. Divided, we're easy to defeat." "What do you propose, human Jiho?" Commander Talon Rend asked. There was no mockery in his voice. Only genuine interest. "A unified defense," Jiho said. "Not a Vrexian fleet, or a Talon fleet, or a Krell fleet. A council fleet. All of us together, using our different strengths as advantages instead of competition." "That's never been done," Silver Fang said. "Neither had a human gaining predator loyalty by hugging a cub," Jiho replied. "Neither had a prey species being shown mercy After decades of manipulation, we've been breaking patterns for months now. Let's break this one too. WT. WT. The debate that followed was intense. Military commanders from a dozen species argued about chain of command, tactics, resource allocation. But something was different this time. They were arguing together, not against each other. They were trying to find a solution that worked for everyone, not just their own species. Kim Sora contributed strategic analysis. Park Minho offered insights on integrated security forces based on his work with the Krell. Lee Junho proposed medical support structures that could treat multiple species, even the Hivarathi. Through Skitterbrood, offered their technological expertise in atmospheric systems, suggesting they could provide environmental support for the diverse crew requirements. It took 2 days of nearly continuous negotiation, but finally, they had a plan. The Council would form a unified defense fleet, drawing ships and personnel from every member species. Command would be shared. Commander Talon Rend would lead ground forces, Silver Fang would coordinate fleet movements, and Jiho, surprisingly, would serve as diplomatic coordinator, ensuring all the different species could work together effectively. "You're not a military commander," Ambassador Yoon pointed out privately. "No," Jiho agreed. "But I'm good at getting different species to cooperate. That's what this fleet needs most." The fleet assembled over the next week. It was chaotic at first. Vrexian warriors had to learn to fight alongside Quilvan engineers. Krell pilots had to coordinate with Talon fleet aviators. Hivarathi technicians worked under constant supervision, still earning back trust. Ships from dozens of species, each with different capabilities and requirements, had to function as a unified force. Jiho spent 18-hour days mediating disputes, facilitating communication, and helping species understand each other's combat doctrines. He discovered that many conflicts arose from simple misunderstandings. A Vrexian battle cry that seemed like rage to other species was actually a coordination signal. A Krell tactical withdrawal that looked like cowardice was actually a strategic repositioning. He also made sure to include the non-combat species. The Quilvan might not have warriors, but they had the best engineers. The Trilaxian could not fight, but their crystalline bodies could process sensor data faster than any computer. Even species that had never been in combat before found ways to contribute. Sharp Eye, too young to join the fleet, visited Jiho before the departure. The young Vrexian had made something else. A small banner depicting dozens of different species standing together. "For the ship," Sharp Eye explained, "so everyone remembers why we fight. Not just for our own species. For everyone. For everyone. For everyone remembers." Jiho accepted the banner gratefully. It would fly in the command center of the lead ship. The fleet launched on the 8th day after the first attack. It was the largest coordinated military action in Council history, and it was led by species who had been enemies mere months ago. The flagship carried a crew that included Vrexians, humans, Krell, Fangor, Quilvan, and even a Hivarathi environmental specialist. The first contact with the enemy came at the edge of the Kelmar Nebula. The hostile fleet was even larger than initial reports suggested. The enemy ships were dark, angular things that seemed to absorb light. They attacked in coordinated waves, using tactics that suggested hive mind coordination. The first battle was brutal. The Council fleet lost ships. Crews died. But they held formation. When Vrexian ships took heavy damage, Quilvan engineers coordinated rescue operations. When Krell fighters needed support, Talon fleet aviators provided cover. When the enemy tried to isolate and destroy individual species ships, the entire fleet repositioned to protect each other. Jiho worked from the command center, maintaining communication across the fleet. He watched tactical displays and listened to reports. But his real job was keeping everyone working together. When Vrexian pride clashed with Krell tactics, he mediated. When prey species felt overwhelmed, he reminded them why they were fighting. When the Hivarathi technician was excluded from a planning session out of lingering distrust, Jiho insisted they be included. "We are pack now," he reminded them, using the Vrexian term that had become common across the fleet. "We protect each other. All of us." The battles continued for 2 weeks. The Council fleet learned and adapted. They discovered that the enemy had a weakness. Their hive coordination broke down when their command ships were destroyed. But those command ships were heavily defended. It took a coordinated assault from multiple species, each contributing their unique capabilities to penetrate those defenses. The final battle took place near a colony world called Haven, which housed refugees from multiple species. The enemy fleet was preparing to destroy it. The Council fleet arrived just in time. The battle was the largest yet. Ships from both sides filled the space around Haven. Weapons, fire, lit up the darkness. The Council fleet fought with desperate determination, knowing that hundreds of thousands of civilians depended on them. Commander Talon Rend led a boarding action against the primary command ship, with Vrexian warriors fighting alongside Krell soldiers and even some brave Quilvan volunteers. Silverfang coordinated the fleet with brilliant tactical precision, using the diverse capabilities of different species' ships like instruments in an orchestra. The Hivarathi technician, whose name was Click Voice, saved an entire wing of fighters by rapidly modifying their life support systems when enemy weapons created toxic atmospheres. And Jiho did what he did best. He kept everyone connected. When communication systems were damaged, he found alternative channels. When morale flagged, he reminded them what they were fighting for. When species started to panic or fight among themselves, he calmed them with words that now came naturally. "We are stronger together. We are pack. We protect each other." The enemy command ship was destroyed. Its destruction cascaded through the enemy fleet, exactly as predicted. Without coordination, the hostile ships began to fall back. The Council fleet pressed the advantage. By the end of the day, the enemy had retreated back into unknown space, their invasion broken. The victory celebration on Haven was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies a year ago embraced as comrades. Vrexian warriors lifted Quilvan engineers on their shoulders. Krell pilots sang victory songs with Talon fleet aviators. Even Click Voice of the Hivarathi was welcomed, their contributions in battle earning genuine respect. Jiho stood on the observation deck of the flagship, looking at the assembled fleet. Ships from dozens of species floated in formation, their crews celebrating together. Sharp Eye's banner hung in the command center behind him, its message now proven true. Commander Talon Rend joined him, still in battle armor. "You were right, human Jiho. Together, we are stronger." "We always were," Jiho replied. "We just needed to realize it." Small Fang arrived with Sharp Eye, who had insisted on being brought to see his friend as soon as the fleet returned. The young Vrexian rushed to Jiho and hugged him. "You kept everyone safe," Sharp Eye said. "Just like you kept me safe." "Everyone kept everyone safe," Jiho corrected gently. "That's what pack means." Silverfang of the Krell approached with several other fleet commanders. "The Council is formally recognizing this fleet structure as permanent. They are calling it the Pack Fleet. They want you to continue as coordinator." Jiho was about to protest that he was not qualified when Ambassador Yoon appeared with Kim Sora, Park Minho, and Lee Junho. They all wore expressions of amused exasperation. "Don't even try to decline," Kim Sora said. "You've literally created a new model for interspecies cooperation. You've turned a diplomatic station into the command center of the galaxy's first unified military force. You're qualified." "She's right," Park Minho added. "Also, I'm now second in command of integrated security forces, so I'm not letting you back out and leave me to handle this alone." Lee Junho smiled. "I've been appointed Chief Medical Officer for Interspecies Health Initiatives. We're all in this together, Jiho. Always reaching for something better," Ambassador Yoon said, echoing Lee Junho's words from months ago. "That's the human way. And now, It's becoming the galactic way. The celebrations continued for days. But soon, work began again. The enemy had retreated, but they might return. The pack fleet needed to be organized, trained, supplied. New protocols had to be written for coordinating different species in combat and peacetime. The cultural revolution that had started with a hug now had to be institutionalized into the structures that governed the galaxy. It was exhausting work, but Jiho did not face it alone. He had pack now. Vrexians who swore loyalty, Krell who offered protection, Quilven who provided wisdom, humans who gave support, even the Hivarathi, slowly earning back trust through steady contribution, were becoming part of this new structure. 6 months after the Battle of Haven, the Council held a ceremony. It was to formally establish the pack fleet and recognize those who had made it possible. Jiho stood on a stage with Commander Talon Rend, Silver Fang, Click Voice, and representatives from dozens of species. But the surprise came when Small Fang took the stage with Sharp Eye. The young Vrexian, now significantly larger and more confident, spoke to the assembled delegates in clear, common tongue. "I want to tell you about the day everything changed," Sharp Eye began. "I was very sad. My grandmother had died, and my father had to leave. I was crying, and I knew crying was shameful. I tried to stop, but I could not." The chamber was silent. Sharp Eye continued. "Then a human came to me. He did not see shame. He saw sadness. He did not see weakness. He saw someone who needed help. He hugged me. He protected me. He showed me that strength and gentleness are not opposites." The young Vrexian looked at Jiho with clear affection. "Because of what he did, my father swore loyalty. Because of that loyalty, other warriors joined. Because of those warriors, our species learned a new form of strength. And because of that strength, we stand here today, united in a way our ancestors never imagined possible." Sharp Eye turned to address the full council. "I am young. I will live for many cycles. I hope that when I am old, I will tell my own cubs about this time. About how the galaxy changed because one human chose compassion over fear, cooperation over competition, and mercy over revenge. About how we learned that our greatest strength comes not from our claws or our weapons, but from our ability to stand together." The applause was thunderous. As Jiho stood on that stage, surrounded by beings from across the galaxy who had become something more than allies, he thought back to that moment in the conference room. A crying cub. A simple choice. A hug. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness reshape entire worlds. Sometimes strength means being gentle. Sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is simply care about someone different from yourself. The human had hugged the crying cub, and every predator in the room had sworn loyalty. Not because they were manipulated or controlled, but because they recognized something true and powerful. Compassion was not weakness. Unity was not surrender. And cooperation was the strongest survival strategy of all. The galaxy would never be the same. And it had all started with a hug. As the ceremony concluded and species mingled in celebration, Jiho slipped away to the observation deck. He looked out at the stars, at the vast darkness between worlds, at the endless possibilities that lay ahead. There would be more challenges, more conflicts, more enemies, perhaps. But there would also be pack. There would be unity. There would be species who had learned to see each other not as predator and prey, strong and weak, but as partners in survival. Sharp Eye found him there, as the young Vrexian often did. They stood together in comfortable silence, human and Vrexian, watching the stars. "What are you thinking?" Sharp Eye asked eventually. "That I'm very glad I met you," Jiho said honestly. "That day, in the conference room, I had no idea what would happen. I just knew you needed help. And in fact, and we would be." "And now?" Sharp Eye asked. "Now we have pack," Jiho replied. "Now we have hope. Now we have a galaxy learning that there's a better way." Sharp Eye leaned against Jiho's side, the same gesture he had made as a much smaller cub. Jiho? Yes? Thank you for hugging me. Jiho smiled and put an arm around the young Vrexian's shoulders. Anytime, Sharp Eye. That's what Pack does. We take care of each other. Outside the station, the ships of the Pack fleet maintained their patrol. Inside, dozens of species worked, lived, and learned together. And throughout the galaxy, the story spread. The story of how a human hugged a crying cub, and how that single act of compassion changed everything. It was a very human story. But increasingly, it was becoming a galactic story too. A story of hope, unity, and the radical power of choosing kindness in a universe that had forgotten such choices were possible. The future was uncertain. But for the first time in galactic history, dozens of species faced that uncertainty together. As Pack, as partners, as friends. And it had all started with a hug.